Hey there, it's Katie Jarvis with Managing the Mess. If we haven't met before, I'm a K-6 elementary art teacher, and I teach at a Title I school just outside of Washington, D.C. In this video, we're going to get chatty, and I am going to answer some of my viewers' questions from YouTube. I also got some questions from my followers over on Instagram, and recently I was able to lead a professional development for new art teachers. So I got a couple of in-person questions there that I want to weave into today's conversation also. As I'm talking, try to ignore the crazy mess behind me. This is my ketchup and pickle week. So we're to the end of the quarter and students have an opportunity to catch up on their work, and then they get to pick and choose what they want to do. The stations that you probably can see are the ones covered with the plastic tablecloths. I've got marker prints going on in the front here. And in the back, there are spiderweb placemats, and students are doing paintings with those. Over here, all the markers, that is for spin art. If you're curious about any of those updated stations that I'm doing for this fall, Ketchup and Pickle Day, make sure you check out my YouTube shorts. And that's where you can find those videos. And I have a full video that explains Ketchup and Pickle Day as well, if you're looking for more details on how I run that. We're at the end of the quarter, so it is the spooky season. So that's what's up with this outfit and all the kind of drab colors and not my flashy, colorful lily that you're used to seeing. Let's get into the first question. So I got the question, how do I manage the glue? And do I already have a video about that? I have a YouTube short about how I manage the glue, but it has a lot of really good information. So I'm gonna repeat it here. For glue sticks, I get the Elmer's 0.77 ounce glue sticks. These are like the chunky jumbo size. I like them because you don't go through them as quickly. I keep extra lids or hats for the glue sticks near where I store the glue so students can independently get those should they need them. At the beginning of the year, I do use glue sponges with my kindergarten students, and I set these up by moistening the sponge and then adding the liquid Elmer's glue. I don't water down the glue when I add more later on because I've found for me that grows mold. I do use a container that seals pretty tightly. This is from Lakeshore Learning. So you're gonna need something with a very tight seal if you're using those. I have stopped completely using the Elmer's squeezy bottles of glue and started using these jars. So there are jars that come, this is the brand Coloration, but they're couple brands making this now, little jars, and they have a brush attached in the lid. So this can be set down on the table and the lid will stand up by itself. Students really enjoy using these. I wish that when I'd set mine up, I had put Vaseline around the rim before I ever filled them. I think that would have helped them to open and close a little bit easier over time. Mine have gotten a little bit dried out with glue a few times, and one or two needed an adult to open them up. So for students to just be able to reliably open them, you may want to put that Vaseline on before you fill them. When you're using them for the first time with your classes, you really do need to teach your students how to use them. They can get knocked over and you can have a giant puddle of glue. So you need to warn them about that. Also, they need to wipe on the edges of the bottle, just like you would with nail polish. Otherwise, they're going to get like these big, gooey, spider webs of glue and get too much on their paper. So you do need to teach that wiping. And I still stick with the dot, not a lot, even though we're using that paintbrush, so that we're getting the correct amount of glue and spreading it out on what we're gluing. I've used it with popsicle sticks, with craft foam, with construction paper. It has worked great with all of those mediums. One of the most frequent questions that I get asked is, where did I get this drying rack? It is an AWT Racket heavy duty drying rack. I will put a link in the description down below. I definitely recommend it. It has 40 shelves, which I can easily fill with 5 classes in one school day. But that is a sizable drying rack. It's definitely super sturdy. It is on wheels. You can easily move it around. And it's something I would definitely recommend if you don't have one, that you invest in it. If you do get one, I know that I've seen people before have trouble because you have to assemble it yourself. So if you can find somebody that's put one together before, that knows what they're doing to get the tension right on the shelves, I'm sure that makes all of the difference. If that isn't working, they're going to have a drying rack that's going to drive you crazy. So that is something to look out for if you do purchase a new one, is getting somebody to support you in putting that together. I frequently get the question about what do I do with early finishers? And I feel like my answer is not with the trend. I try to avoid having early finishers, and I try to really keep my students busy for a couple of reasons. One is I do have free time at the end of the quarter. So they do have that free time, but week to week, they're not trying to rush to get to play with the items and materials that they get to use for free time. Also, many of those free time items, I don't know about you, but I've purchased those with my own money. And I can't imagine the beating they would take week after week if that many students were frequently using them. So having them use them only once a quarter, or here and there, things like Legos and Magna-Tiles, I think that those items are going to last a lot longer. I also want to be using the time that they have in class to be very focused. Now, how I kind of avoid having people finish early is that I will do a planning sheet for my lessons, and then we will do our lesson very often. At the end of the lesson, we will do some type of exit ticket to finish the project. If I don't have an exit ticket, or I think that I'm gonna have a little bit more extra time, I will sometimes intro the next project, rather doing this maybe at the beginning of class and giving students a chance to plan for that new project. Or sometimes we just kind of stop and shut down early when most of the people are done, and I'll intro the new project that we're going to be starting on the following week. That way I'm using my instructional time to the max, and I am able to enjoy when my students do have centers and do have some free time. And that I know that they are not rushing through things to just get to that. I also know that when I did have like centers with Magna-Tiles and Etch-a-Sketches and things like that, not only did things frequently get damaged just from the tough use of them, but I would often have to clean up these areas myself. I'd be thinking about the paint and the clay and giving directions about that in my cleanup. And at the end of the day, I would like walk back and see my early finisher area and be like, oh my gosh, I have to clean that up myself so that it's not on the floor in the way for the custodians. So it's just another thing to manage, I think, if you've got that early finisher station. So for my students, if some miracle happens and there's a little bit of free time, try not to do it very often. I keep it very simple. I have blank free draw paper. They can look at books. I do have yearbooks from past years, and some older students will ask to borrow those. And they just kind of sit away from the group if they're doing any of these free time activities. I have little lap desks that they can use to draw on or to look at the books. I also will have origami as a choice because that's very quiet and easy to clean up. So I have some origami books that they can use, as well as some pre-cut. It's just copy paper for them to use, but it's nothing too exciting. So hopefully they are able to really, really enjoy our ketchup and pickle day at the end of the quarter. I had one inquisitive viewer that gave me 3 separate questions. I'm going to get to those next. First thing was, how do I protect bulletin boards? I actually do not have any bulletin boards in the hallway. My building was renovated right before I came here. And I guess in the new buildings, the teachers have decided that they don't like bulletin boards. They're a lot of work. So we just have the little strips up where we can staple up artwork. And I staple artwork up outside of their homeroom class and outside of my art rooms and outside of our cafeteria area. We don't really have to do anything to protect it. We did have one incident recently that was just kind of rare and out of the blue, where some artwork was damaged, just one piece of artwork, but it happened twice. So what I did is like in my beginning of my class, we went over the rules, and I just made an announcement to everyone that we should not be touching the artwork, and that if we see someone else touching it, that we should stand up to them and tell them that that's not a very kind thing to do. If we don't feel comfortable standing up to the person that is touching the artwork, that we should let a grown-up know. I know that there is some options out there as far as like putting up lamination or something, if you're talking about like a high traffic area where students might be touching it in a cafeteria or something like that, but it's nothing that I regularly utilize. They asked what, or like, how do I feed my soul, like as an artist, like your artist soul, like making art for me, trying new applications, etc. I think that every art teacher is somewhere on a spectrum, right? They are an artist, they're a teacher. Like you're both as an art teacher. I definitely lean more teacher than artist. The things that I like to do creatively have a lot to do with, making videos and creating content right now. That's something that just really has sparked a lot of interest in me. I have a family and I have a young daughter. So often I will make crafts and projects that are geared towards things that I'm going to do in the classroom, and she tests them out with me. So just really having that teacher hat on a lot when I am creating artwork, or having that mom hat on, I think. Feeding my soul as an artist and getting more creative ideas. I love to go places and get inspired by seeing different artworks and different shows. I definitely am into Broadway shows. So that is what I think I find a lot of inspiration from. And we do spend a lot of time going into Washington, D.C., which brings me to their last question. Did I see the Yao exhibit that was in Northern Virginia? It was in D.C., in the horse show. I think I saw it 3, maybe 4 times while it was there. It was there for 2 of our spring breaks. So my daughter and I went when it very first opened up, and then we went this past spring break, and we actually did a vlog on that of the things that we saw around DC. Lots and lots of fun art things, as well as that Yao exhibit. So if you're interested in that, take a peek at that video. We went back, I guess, to show my husband the exhibit. And then I went back once when my mom was visiting. So yeah, I did go 4 times, but it was definitely worth it. And I look forward to seeing some more of her pieces in person in the future. I got several questions that were all different variations of, what do I do when a student refuses to make art? I do have a video when students don't follow directions that are going to give you some more ideas than what I'm going to say here. When I have a student refuse to do art, it's rare, but I try to figure out what is going on. I was asked, like, if I make them participate. I do, but it might not be within that class in that moment. We would have to save the work. The students know this, and it would have to be done on catch-up day, or made up sometime in the next class period. So I try to get to the bottom of, is there something that's kind of holding them back from getting started? Can I give them a little help? Can somebody else at their table inspire them to kind of get them going? Do they have an issue that's going on that they need to go see the counselor? Do they need to go get a drink? What is kind of holding them back from getting going? So I would take a deep dive into that before I really figured out what I was going to do with that unique situation about them refusing to work. I would give the option sometimes for a student to just take a break. And often they would choose to rejoin the group depending upon what's going on. But the work doesn't go away. I do make them finish that as catch-up work. Now, if a student does refuse to work or takes a significant break during the art class, I not only let the classroom teacher do that, and I communicate to the classroom teachers using a little form called an art support report. I have a video about that, kind of breaking that down, but it's something that I have available on Teachers Pay Teachers. I would also contact the family, especially if I can't get to the bottom of what's going on, or if I do. I could say, hey, they were feeling really tired, and then they didn't want to participate with what we were doing, or whatever, the student had given me any information, or if they didn't give me information, asking for some more information from the parents as to how I can encourage that student and how we can all work together to encourage that student in the coming weeks in art. One of the questions was if I had a digital or paper calendar that I used to plan my displays. I do not. There is no plan with that. I definitely keep a lot of artwork up when I can. However, this year I'm being really kind to myself because I've got a tough schedule. I feel like I'm always with students. And so hanging has been only on my schedule on Friday afternoons. By Friday afternoon, I feel like I really just want to get out of my classroom. It's nice to chat with other teachers. So on Friday, I have graded things through the week in my routine, and I'll have just a big Rubbermaid tote or a laundry basket, and I will take that and go all around the building and take down artwork and hang up what I have graded. So we finish a project maybe every 2-3 weeks, depending on what grade level it is, and then I would be changing it out. So I would say a little more frequently than once a month I change it, but again, It's one of those things where I'm trying to be kind to myself this year with it because I don't have a lot of time to display, but I think it's really important to do that and to celebrate your artist. The next question is, I don't have a lot of prep time at school, so same. So do you recommend different lessons for each grade or one lesson and modify it by grade? I do different lessons for every grade level, but I've been teaching for 22 years, so I have a lot of lessons that I can pull from. If I was just starting out, I think that I would focus in on a certain medium and have a different project for each grade level. So I think I would try to figure all the things out about printmaking and then figure out a project for each grade level. The problem is if you make a pumpkin project and you do it with everybody in your whole school, you can't do that next year. And guess what? You can't do it for quite a few years because you let the kindergartners do it. So you really need to keep track of who has done what. So that's why I do prefer doing something for each grade level. If you take a deep dive into something like clay, you're gonna get really good at it. You can pool all your resources. You can figure out how you want to make that, sequencing of how you want things to spiral around and what techniques and things you want to repeat and what you want to build on as far as art skills from year to year. And you can do that by medium. So how I would do that is in the beginning of the school year, I do a lot of collage and get that covered for everybody. As the school year starts to move in, I get into the messier things. I get into the painting, I get into the printmaking and the clay. So the middle of my year is the messy mediums that I do. I would plan, because the end of the school year is not only crazy as far as behavior, but of things, that you need to get done. You need to start planning for the next school year. The weather gets nicer. That's when I like to have a lot of high engagement projects. And I do a lot of weaving and fiber arts, and I plan those for the very end of the school year. So I hope that helps answer that question. So I got the question, what do I do when I'm doing a directed drawing and students are like putting their paper up in my face and saying like this, like this? How do I combat that? And I've seen this question a lot on Facebook, and for good reason. It's completely annoying. When I do directed drawings, it's not all that often. Typically, I will make a YouTube video of my own, or I am drawing something live, and it's just a few steps that they're following along. But I will only monitor the first step. Maybe I'm saying something to them like, I know that it's hard to tell the size. In real life, this needs to be drawn in the middle of your paper and it should be as big as your hand. And I might walk around and monitor that first step. But I'm teaching the students that they decide when they want to flip the paper over, when they want to erase something and adjust it. And that's their job. They're taking in the information and they're learning, and then they're applying it on their artwork how they see fit. So I'm not going to give anybody any feedback. And I tend to stay away from them. I tend to stay in the very front of the room when we're doing something like this, so that I'm pausing the video and I'm giving encouraging advice and letting them have the option, if when they get done drawing it, if they want to make another one, and this is just a practice, they can. But not to stop, not to give up, to make sure that they're staying where we are within the drawing. So if we've already drawn the dog's head and they kind of gave up on that part and we're drawing the dog's paws now, they could join in with us and do that part rather than just sitting there. But I'm not giving anybody's feedback. So then they really stop that like this, because I'll be like, oh no, I'm not peeking. I love being surprised. I love seeing how amazing the artwork you do is in the end, because I felt like when I was looking at it frequently, when I was giving somebody feedback, then everybody wanted that feedback. It made them a lot more needy and thinking that it needed to be, something that I approved of. When really it needs to be, are they happy with the artwork that they are creating? Another time when I really won't look at their artwork, and I hope this doesn't sound too mean, is when we're cleaning up. So I go around often when they are making artwork, not directed drawing, but just when they're doing their studio time. I go around a lot. I put pre-printed name tag labels on their artwork. So that's a time when I go around and talk with them and kind of check in with each student. So chances are I've given out a lot of compliments. I've walked around and I've seen everything. So when we're cleaning up, I'm kind of no nonsense of, we're not stopping to, reflect on things or make a plan about something for next week. We're all focused on cleaning up. So I don't stop and look or comment or compliment people's artwork as we're cleaning. And I just kind of keep that a habit from week to week. It's kind of hard to do, but I would just, we got to be focused on cleaning up. This is not a time when we're having side conversations or trying to work through our artistic problems. I often get asked if I'm a full-time or a part-time art teacher. I am a full-time art teacher. I feel like I'm always here. I teach kindergarten through 6th grade, and I'm very blessed to have an hour-long art classes. I know that that is a lot longer than the national average. For kindergarten, I have 45 minutes, and I get asked, how do I break down that time? How do I use that class time? The first 3 minutes or so, I use as an opening routine. So we do a greeting, we recite the rules. I go over any announcements that I want to go through with the entire school. Now, I have a breakdown of that routine in a video that I have that's very popular called Do You Know How to Start Art? And even if you don't have classes that are as long as mine, I think you can pick bits and pieces of it out that you would want to use to start your class and create that routine for yourself. After I do that 3-minute opening routine, I will get into my lesson. Now, my lessons start out with stating the objective. So if you're going to be observed, make sure that that's in there. You don't want to just throw somebody in a car and take them for a ride and not tell them where they're going. You need to let your students know what they're going to be learning that day and why. What are the outcomes? How are they going to know when they got it? Now, because I teach a lot of English language learners, I've gotten into the habit of after I state that objective, I go through my vocabulary. So I don't just start talking about brayers and ink and printmaking. I will have a picture with the word and I will explain what each of those items are before we get into the lesson. The lesson comprises of a planning sheet typically, and I will show them examples of how to fill out the planning sheet and what we're looking for with that to come up with idea generation. Then we will get into what's going to happen in the lesson. A lot of times I do create YouTube videos for my students to watch that breaks down the steps. And then we will get started where they're doing that independent practice and working on this. And I call that like our studio time. During the studio time, I will leave some images up on the board that students would find helpful to refer back to, maybe illustrating the steps and what they need to do. I typically will plan at some point in the lesson to either call students back to the carpet or ring my bell and have them stop and give them additional information. So a little bit of like, I'm catching them at some part in the project and giving them a little more info or giving them some feedback on how things are going or how I see people solving problems. And then I set them back to work. And that helps to refocus them. We will clean up between, I would say, like 5 and 8 minutes from the end of the class, and that just depends on how much needs to be done during the cleanup. My students do all of the cleaning up. I have a really good routine that I feel is pretty solid for that. It's in a video called How to Avoid Cleanup Chaos. So you'll want to check that out. And I have my students line up before the classroom teacher gets here and we play a game in the line. I have a video about that as well, but that's how I structure that hour-long class. I did not even scratch the surface in answering all of the wonderful questions that I got from our teachers just like you. If you found this video to be helpful, make sure you hit that like button. Be sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss any future videos. And if you are already subscribed, please, please, please share this channel with another art teacher. If you've got questions that you'd like to see featured in an upcoming video, make sure that you comment down below or reach out to me on social media. I can't wait to hear from you. This is the video that YouTube thinks you should watch next.